hardware node that we want to kind of pay attention to. One, for this nugget, is the networking node, and the other is the network adapters node. Now, if you recall, we actually added 3 VMNICs into this server. VMNIC 0, which is currently connected in for the management network connection, and then VMNIC 1 and VMNIC 2, which are currently connected to no switch at all. So these are essentially sitting unused on this host at this point. Here into the networking tab, we can get a nice graphical representation of how the physical adapters end up linking into the various physical networks that we end up creating. And the vSwitch itself is effectively this little gray box here in the middle. Anything on the right-hand side of this gray box corresponds to something that exists in the physical world, such as a physical adapter. Anything on the left-hand side of the box is something that corresponds in the logical world to some sort of port or port group. Now, this is directly out of the box. I haven't made any changes to this other than installing it, the ESX1 server, right into the vSphere client and then essentially clicking on this node. So what we're looking at is the initial configuration right as soon as you complete that installation of VSXi. In this configuration, the physical adapter VMNIC 0, the first adapter on this computer, is currently plugged into this vSwitch. And this vSwitch is, on the other side, plugged into a VM kernel port at 192.168.0.202, which is used for purposes of the management network. This is essentially the pathway by which commands are sent into this host for the purposes of doing whatever administrative things are required for this host. Also connected to this vSwitch is a virtual machine port group called VMNetwork. And any virtual machines that are actually on ESX1 could potentially be added into this virtual machine port group so that they would get whatever IP addresses are available to that port group. Now, this is, again, the logical side of the network, and on the other side is the physical side of the network. I can, if I want, adjust the properties of both of these sides of the network by clicking on the Properties button and then viewing what I have, or what becomes available to me here in the Properties screen. Remember, there were those 3 elements here: the switch itself, the VMNetwork virtual machine port group, and then the management network, which is used for vMotion and IP storage, and also for the management network connection. The first thing I want to take a look at here is the vSwitch. And you'll notice here that this vSwitch is currently configured with 120 available ports that it could pass out on the left-hand side of the equation. I also have the opportunity to change the MTU properties associated with this vSwitch. Now, if you're familiar with the concept of jumbo frames, the MTU size is generally set to 1500 by default, but we can set this up to as far as, I believe, 9000 to enable jumbo frames to occur across this vSwitch. Now, jumbo frames are one of those things you have to know for the exam. Some people turn them on in their environment because they find it gives them better performance, better throughput out of their existing network connections. But be aware that if you do turn on jumbo frames, you would have to change your MTU size here, and you would also have to change your MTU size at every hop along the way between this server and every other device that this server needed to connect to. Missing any hops would mean that, well, you would have to drop down to that original 1500 MTU size, and you would lose the benefits of jumbo frames. Now, on this vSwitch, in addition to setting the switch properties and the advanced properties, there are a number of different policies that can be set for defining how traffic is actually allowed to pass, or how it is configured to pass across this switch. First are the security